Okay, so like I said, let's talk a little bit about John Alloway. Physical description, family background, wife, children, anything that you can give me to help find the investigator find at least the family, and then we'll move into your actual relationship with John and some of the things you guys went through together. And we'll just spend, I got an hour and a half, so as much time as you want to take on John.
Well, I first met John when I joined the 5th Infantry Division MP platoon. That was in November of 1943 in Northern Ireland. Now, a platoon consists of about 60 men and the officers. We had about 3 lieutenants and a major, our CO. And we were billeted at the time in Northern Ireland in about 3 Quonset huts. John was in one of them. 8 of us joined the platoon at the same time, and they scattered us. I wound up in one of the Quonset huts by myself. The rest of them were scattered in the other 2. Eventually, I got to know them all little by little, but I realized the fact that they were a regular Army division, they were all more or less professionals. They had been in Iceland 2 years before they arrived in Northern Ireland. One of the regiments, the 10th, relieved the English in Iceland before Pearl Harbor. So we were one of the first divisions overseas. That is the 5th. Now, I got to know John after a while, and I immediately liked him simply because some of the people were talking about him one day, for example, in the Quonset hut, and I was listening, and they rated John exceptionally high. He was quite a man, evidently. Well, at the time, I really didn't know who John was. Well, eventually, I got to know him, and one day I asked him. We used to get our mail there, a lot of our mail, and John one time showed me some of his letters. He was getting letters from full colonels, high-ranking officers, all in the Air Force. Some of them were already in England. And he was getting letters from them, which told me then that what I had heard was that John was an only son from a wealthy family from East Lansing, Michigan. An only son. And the letters he received from high-ranking officers in the Air Force told me that. See, they knew John in civilian life, evidently from the friendship of the friendships in the family, his family, and these letters. Most of the letters were always, of course, asking how he was and so forth, and how the families were, and so little things like that. But eventually, most of them would say, "Why don't you transfer over, John? You see, you'll come into our unit with a rating." John was only a PFC, private first class. And one day, John showed me some of the letters. He said, "Look at this," and I read. One of them was for a full colonel. And yeah, they all of them would try to get him to transfer over. They would have gotten him in like that if he said yes. And I asked him, "Why don't you do it, John?" He told me, "I don't want to leave you guys." He was going to wind up on the ground doing semi-infantry stuff, you know. I told him, "John, you're crazy. You get in there with a sergeant's ratings already? That's more money to begin with." And look at the prestige. Look at the power you have. No, he said, no, I want to stay with you guys. Well, how are you going to not like a guy like that? You tell me. He was about 6, I would say he was easily 6 foot. I know that. He might have been a little over 6 foot. He was his frame was sort of.
Just get some more. Keep talking.
His frame was sort of, what would you call it? Spare. You wouldn't say he was exactly well built, but because we were all in shape though. He had this long, rangy frame, and one thing about him that was so appealing was he had the craziest grin on when he had a grin on his face. He just kind of slopped all over his face. It was unique to him. It fit him to a T. With his personality was a quiet sense of humor. When he spoke, you hardly ever heard him say nonsense things. If there was any humor involved, it was also something that maybe some of the guys might have to look at up. He was well educated, coming from a family like that. I miss him. Oh, God, I missed him when I came back home. I still do. I miss him. I miss him young. I miss him so much. Thinking back on these things brings back memories. I know full well that had I been able to go and visit him and his family, I would have got hugs like crazy. Why? Because no doubt John would have told him how I took care of him and Young, how I gave of myself. When you're in the combat area, memories that to a person that was never in combat would never understand.
Yeah, I used to wonder why some before I went into the service, why some of the returned veterans cried so easily. I just could not understand it. I was a tough kid from East LA, you know. Now I know. That war didn't come cheap. A lot of good kids never became grandfathers, fathers, sweethearts, never knew what it was like to hold a baby in their arms. That's why I cry. And you wonder, what the hell am I doing here? I should be with them. That's the first thing that hits you when you look down at those crosses. And then you start to cry. Have you ever seen some of them being interviewed on television and suddenly the one that's talking stops and he has trouble talking? He's about to break down and cry. Heck, I've seen some of the roughest looking guys that you could ever see break down and cry like little babies. And when they do, you cry too. Because you're related. What he feels is you feel.